How to read 50 books a year? Now, everyone has asked this question. It might not be the number 50, it might be 60, it might be 300, it might be 500. The first question I'd like to ask you is, why would you want to read 50 books a year? What is the need? Right? Are you doing this because you have a competition with the person next to you? He said 50, so you're saying 51? Or is it because you genuinely want to read so much? Or what is it? Because look, books are just a gateway to knowledge, right? It's a gateway to you acquiring some new information. My concern with people who come and say, hey, I want to read 50 books a year is why? It doesn't make sense. You could read 50 Tinkle books a year, right? You can beat the competition doing that. But you're not going to gain any new knowledge. In fact, the best books take a very, very long time to read because you'll have to reread it most often, right? So you only manage 2 books a year because they're so content heavy and so dense. No 2 books are alike, right? If you take Marvel Comics, say a 200-page Marvel comic, and you take a 200-page thesis on physics, one is going to be much more complex to read than the other. The physics book will require you to do research every second. It will be probably 10 times more boring. So most of you have heard about the mainstream books, right? Books like The Psychology of Money, to Homo Deus, to all the others, right? You've heard of these books, but there's a whole layer, there's a whole depth below them. Right? And these are more technical books because you start with the massy and then go technical. This is how it always works. So my concern is you might just be stuck at the most massy of these books, right? Which are comic books, by the way. That's the top of the funnel. The thing is, I have nothing against comic books. I grew up reading comic books. I love them. But you can't compare them to traditional books, right? So what I'm trying to say is no 2 books are alike. Even if they're not comic books, even if they have no images, 2 books can be in completely different leagues. Please try and understand that. Now let's assume you have this target of 50 because you want to start reading. You want to feel learned. So the only reason I said all that is because I want you to have thought through it before you want to read 50 books a year. You need to be doing it for the right reasons. So let's assume you are doing it for the right reasons and begin. The first thing to making sure you read 50 books a year is to start really small, which could start with comic books. Comic books are a great way to get started because you learn to keep your phone aside, you learn to keep your computers aside, and you learn to pick up a book and stay engrossed. The word engrossed is very interesting, right? Because engrossed essentially means that it has captured you. A book is the mind of another person. You need to let it absorb and capture you, right? And a comic book is the best way to get started. And the coolest part about comic books is that you are genuinely interested. You're not reading because Ramesh down the road is reading and he's saying, "Main padh raha hu." You're reading because you enjoy it. That's why I like comic books as a starting, as training wheels. So once you're done with comic books, most people often move on to fiction, right? For me, it was the Harry Potter series, it was Eragon, right? That started me on the fiction path. And one thing that might irritate you with fiction is the fact that I'm not learning anything. I'm not going to be able to take this information and run $1 billion business tomorrow. My question is, why do you want to do that? And actually, you're missing the point. Most businesses today, most $1 billion businesses today are English-based businesses, are businesses in English. And the biggest job of the CEOs and the vice president team there is to write, is to communicate in English. 90% of my job is writing and reading. Other 10% is images, right? So if you're able to read Harry Potter, you're able to read that 300-page book into 7 books, then you've read. Your English also improves when you do that because you learn new words, you read about new words. So people forget that English is also a skill, right? And you reading Psychology of Money is not going to improve your English any better than it is if you read Harry Potter. And I think this word engrossing is superb, right? Because we can use it in multiple ways. The first way is just quit any bloody book that you don't find engrossing anymore. The problem is, you're reading a book, you either don't understand it, it's irritating, or you're just not interested. Throw it away. Especially when you're starting, throw it away. I have thrown away more books than most people have started. I can guarantee you that. The minute it stops entertaining you or you're not interested in the subject, throw it away. So ignore the books that you don't like, stick to the engrossing. Because what eventually happens once you've gotten the habit of reading, starting with comic books, then with fiction, is that the non-fiction books that will help you improve your life, especially things like self-help, will pull you in. You'll be like, I want to improve my life, I'm interested in that. And you start reading that. This is the usual path, by the way. This is the path that I went through. Comic books, fiction, self-help, non-fiction, and then other non-fiction. Right? And then I went to textbooks. I actually still read textbooks today, especially with physics and math. One cool thing to do, just to get into the habit, is to start reading before bed. Like, I used to do this before bed every night when I was young. Granted, we didn't have mobile phones back in the day and you guys were born with mobile phones. The thing is, making a pre-sleep reading activity is cool because it builds a habit for you. And reading is a lot about habit. Just like your phone is a lot about habit, right? The human brain wants information. You use a phone as a gateway to content. A book is also content. So create a habit. The next thing, and this is just something about books, right? Especially if you feel bad about throwing away books when you're in between. Remember that the best books in the world are concise. Most non-fiction books can be condensed into an article. Believe it. Most of these books are talking about one thing and they go on and on and on because the publisher asks for n number of pages. How do I know this? Because I published a book with the best publisher in the world, the same guys who published Harry Potter, Bloomsbury. And Bloomsbury explicitly told me and Abhinav when we were writing the book, please make sure it is at least n number of pages. Because we actually wrote a very short book and they asked us to pad it, add more stuff, right? And even then, we tried to pad it with like more information, with new information. And we still were only able to make it to like 150 pages. I know other authors who just pad it with rubbish, right? They're just saying the same thing in a different way. So remember that, and that's why don't be afraid of throwing away a book when it stops engrossing you. So when you say 50 books a year, I don't mind if you read 50 books a year, but throw away 25. Because at least the other 25 has gone inside your stomach and been digested, even if you spit the other 25 out. So focus on retaining information. Don't focus on making this a competition between you and the other person. That's all I have to say.